What is this locality called anyway?
This?
Yeah.
River Edge.
Okay. We're River Edge, New Jersey, at Les Park's daughter's home. He just came up from Florida to attend the Hall of Fame affair Saturday. This basically is the format we use for the archives and the company of Fifers and drummers. Les, would you give us an idea? Where were you born to start with?
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. How long ago was that? Why don't you want to tell?
No, that was in 1926.
1926.
First of all, for once, let me give my full name, Leslie A. Parks.
Parks Jr. I know you don't always use it.
I dropped the junior when my father died. No.
Well, I put it on your scroll.
I gave that's all right. It doesn't matter.
Now, basically, when did you become involved with drum corps? When did you start?
Like I said, I asked Eddie Olsen, and he said he joined OLPH in 1936, and he said I came in about 6 weeks later. Now that doesn't sound right to me. Somehow I got the feeling I came in much later. Don't ask me why, but you know, that's just the way it hits me. Because as far as I can recall, I was still in OLPH in 1940, unless my memory's failing, I don't know. And I know I wasn't there 4 years. Because from OLPH I went to Heiser Post, and then from Heiser I went to Hearst. And from Hearst I went into the service in 1943. But that 36 doesn't ring a bell with me at all. So I really don't know. I can't pin a date down.
Do you remember the name of your instructor, or vaguely, who you served his name?
I think there was a guy, you can't call him an instructor because the guy that was really teaching was Gus Shuck. And he didn't teach much of anything, but we got together and for 15 cents a head, we got this guy.
Olsen?
Yeah, we got this guy Tommy McGrath to come down. I think it was his name anyway. To come down and, you know, show us a few things, because half of us couldn't even play.
Was there a different style of playing that you noted from when you started as what they're doing today? You see any appreciable difference?
Yes and no. It seems to me it was quite a bit more open and loose. I think things have tightened up quite a bit, you know.
I think the M&M has
playing. Oh, well, that's a lost cause. I don't even talk about that.
Be careful now. You got involved in teaching a lot of M&M cores.
Yeah, but that's when they were normal.
Yeah.
They became abnormal after that.
Now I know you're quite an instigator in organizing the Sons of Liberty. Do you recall the first ancient corps, as we refer to ancient corps, fife and drum?
Yes, I certainly do. Union Endicott. I remember seeing them.
Did they have black and orange?
Black and orange uniforms. That was the first ancient corps I ever saw.
Is there anything that you remember about the unusual size of the drums that they used to use?
Yeah, I looked at them. I couldn't believe they were so big.
Yeah,
we were playing on these little sticky rod drums.
You know of any organization that might have influenced either you or friends in, say, maybe the GAR or... No, nothing.
No influences like that. We were pretty isolated up there in OLPH.
You recall any the so-called format of music that the old ancient corps played?
I remember them. They played Mockingbird twice through, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing, and every ancient corps I ever saw did the same thing.
Right. I know, and I played with Yale, so we played everything. I think it was Huntington.
Yeah?
And then another time they went out in the contest, they played some 6/8, finished it, went back and played it all over again, and that was the contest piece. That's the way they used to do it.
Yeah, it was...
the Sons, I think, you started playing medleys.
We were the first ones to start playing medleys and stretch them out, you know, playing 3-4 minutes.
Do you recall the day of the contest that Bob Redigan said that we were absolutely crazy for playing, 6.5 minutes with the contest piece?
No.
Because we subject ourselves to allowing a chance of being penalized.
Well, that just proves how good we were. We could last that long without losing.
You remember any outstanding fifers, drummers, snare, bass, majors, or buglers in your...
Well, at the time is what I considered good drummers, I guess, were Jimmy Woods, and Eddie Fitzgerald, Don Cameron. You remember those guys? They were in there with you.
Yeah.
Actually, those are the only ones I ever knew. As I said, we were
New
really
York,
a very insular
Yeah.
corps. We didn't move around too much.
It wasn't until we started to go around with the Connecticut group that we met some of the outstanding...
I remember seeing who was it?
Quigley or Neely?
No, Redigan with St. Anselm's. He used to come down and play with them, but that was the only one. I didn't pay any attention to him. Who was he? I didn't know.
Yeah. Right.
At the time, I didn't know him. It didn't mean anything to me.
Did the corps years ago ever get together, other than the parades or contests?
We had a unique situation. In Bay Ridge, I lived on 56th Street. The admin's post was on 57th Street. The OLPH Corps was on 59th Street.
Yeah, that's all close by.
St. Anselm's was on 82nd Street. And I think there was a St. Rocco's somewhere down on 40th Street. So the guys from the admin's post, and the KSC was somewhere in there in 60th.
61st Street.
61st. So you had four corps right close together there. And all those guys used to get together at the admin's. Remember they had that little store?
Yeah, they used to go.
We used to get in there and play all day long.
Charlie, Philly Mafoose.
Philly Mafoose, Charlie Coyle,
Yeah.
Jack Cray.
Yeah, that's going back a few years.
Yeah, it sure is.
As you see it today, what is your definition of the so-called ancient corps?
Same as it's always been.
Well, the only thing that I was referring to, but I should have had a preamble to that question, is that so many people today, if you play with a corps that has bugles, they say, what? What happened to the ancient? You're not true ancient. But when you go back to the original field musical unit, they had fife, drum, and bugle. They used to use the field horn.
Yeah. Well,
most people don't look at it as...
no, ancient is really fife and drum, basically. I think the bugle was used mostly as a signal at the time.
Well, I have some pictures that O'Brien gave me from Washington. Huge field musical unit. It was Civil War.
Yeah.
And ironically, the bass was right out in the front. Bass for the first line.
Really? Yeah. Well,
now you know where the regimentals got the idea, right?
Yeah, right.
Did you ever compete in the individuals? And what and where?
Well, when? When I was a kid?
Yeah, anytime.
Oh, when I was a kid, I went in once and I lost.
You've been in individuals more than...
Oh, yeah, well, only after I got into Heiser, I started doing that. Because after the war, I was a charter member at Gabarina Mazarakis post.
Yeah.
That was a reorganization of Hearst and Grand Street and several other corps, McNally post. And all those guys came together and we formed one big M&M corps. And we had a difference of opinion up there between a bunch of guys. And a whole bunch of them left to go to Hawthorne. And there was a Hawaiian fellow that played in Hearst with me when I was a kid, in juniors. I'd be an excellent drummer. And when they formed the Legion post, they wouldn't let him in because he wasn't a veteran. He had punctured ears. So I told him to come along with me when we went down to Heiser.
He stayed with you down there?
Yeah, he stayed for a while down there and then he eventually moved back to Hawaii. And that was really my first start into the individuals then.
Oh, you also competed with the Sons?
Oh yeah, sure.
Won New York State?
New York State, Northeastern.
Northeastern.
Yeah, I competed for quite a few years.
Do you recall anything of the judging as pertaining to the corps? We did have some difficulty between New York and Connecticut. Do you remember those days?
Yes, we did. I think there was a lot of
politics there too.
Geography involved there,
Yeah.
frankly. But it's all water under the bridge now.
Yeah.
I suppose it worked both ways, actually.
Yeah, it did. I know when they used to have the Fifers come to New York, they were compelled to remember that, to play the duties. And well, I remember when I was in the KSC, if we competed in individuals, they let you compete, and you were automatically disqualified because you caught played 120.
Yeah, right.
You weren't allowed in there. You remember anything that basically is what might be considered the popular tunes of that time? So-called standards?
Well, you mean as a kid?
Yeah, or any time.
Well, when I was a kid, of course, it was fife, drum, and bugle. We started out, Squad's Right, and Gallant and Gay, and I don't know, what was some of the other tunes? Offhand, I can't think of them. It's been so many years.
I was going to ask you too, do you have any items that you at any time would care to donate to the museum? But before I forget, we should mention that you and Bill Krug have passed on all the Sons of Liberty music to the company.
That we have.
You transcribed and compiled all the music, and it's now part of the company's history, really. It's going to be in for permanently.
As a matter of fact, before he died, Bill sent me copies of all of his music that he had written, and asked me if I would write beats for them as well, the ones we didn't play.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever come across that piece I mentioned to you, Farewell to Marut? I knew you'd
No, I
written
did
that
not.
out.
I did
And
not.
I cannot find it, and I can't remember how the darn thing went.
79th Farewell to Marut.
Not Gibraltar now. 79 Farewell to Gibraltar, you got that. That's in Cologne Moore.
Oh, and that's
But this one was called Farewell to Marut. Marut, something like that.
Marut.
Yeah, and we played.
There was two tunes we played like that. One was you get these long-winded names that the British had. One was the 25th KOSB, that's King's Own Scottish Borderers, Farewell to someplace. I don't know whether it was Marut or what.
Could be.
And the 79th might have been the other one. I don't know. One was Marut and one was Gibraltar, and I'm not sure which one was which.
Well, I know the one, the Farewell to Gibraltar is in Cologne Moore. And the other one, as I recall, we played it as one separate medley, one separate piece, shouldn't say medley. And I just for the life of me can't remember. Just can't remember.
It could be that 25th. The 25th KOSB's Farewell to Marut.
Do you personally believe that the drumming styles have changed over the years? And if so, one way has it improved or has it strayed too far from the so-called traditional style?
No, I think it's improved. From drummers that I remember, the so-called great drummers of the past. I'm talking about back in the early 1900s. That type. I think it's improved since then, and I think the M&M cause have decided to destroy the whole thing because what they're doing, I don't have a clue. They're off on Cloud 47 someplace.
Who were some of the better known judges that you can recall and you remember from the past?
When I was a kid, not a single one. I didn't know any judges then. But later on, when we first started the Sons, Eddie Fitzgerald was judging, Walter Mullen, Ed Reese.
Burns Moore.
Burns Moore when I was a kid. That's right. He was judging.
He judges a lot when I was in the KSC. I know that.
Yeah.
That was in the 40s.
Frank Martin.
Yeah.
Who happened to be a good friend of mine. I knew Frank well. I'll tell you a little story about Frank. I got to know him very well because we worked together a lot. And he told me one time, he said, you got a hold of Burns Moore and I don't know if this should be on tape, frankly, but...
Well, it's nothing better.
No, it's not really bad, but he took a piece of carbon paper.
I heard Rip did that there.
And he put it down on a piece of cardboard, and he asked Burns to play a seven-stroke roll, and he counted them up, and it was only six.
Strokes, right. I heard some of that. I heard that Rippinger did that to somebody one time, and he was trying to explain to him he wasn't making contact with the first stroke.
Yeah.
He was missing it. And he denied it. He said, well, just play 1/7, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
And there was only 6 dots there for the carbon.
Because I use that ploy when I get tired, As somebody described it to me, you leave out the second beat. I was trying to figure out how do you leave the second one out.
That's an art all by itself. You can do that.
Yeah.
Do you personally have any suggestions that you think that would be help improve whatever the company is doing, or any ideas?
I would like to see more get-togethers.
Yeah.
I think with the way the guys are getting older, and we're all not going to last.
I agree with you, but the only problem with that is some of them that have to travel great distances.
Well, that's true, but at least for the guys that are there, and I would like to see some in the summertime, frankly, so I wouldn't have to come up in the cold.
Yeah, you got a good. Well, what they've been trying to do is to incorporate it with more or less to the basic end of the summer drum corps activities.
Yeah, I know. I realize what they're doing, but
it kind of wraps up. It's true. There's times it is quite cool at that time. We just had to stop to do a battery check.
that drives me nuts.
Yeah, Jack Tenza now, he served, I don't know what it was, one hitch or what in West Point. I guess he was taught by Redigan, and he was working he works for 3M in Washington, and he got a transfer and a promotion. Now he's in Minnesota. Not too happy with all the snow.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
But he's doing well, and he's looking for his retirement. He was at the Dan English Awards night when the Landcraft had it in the hall. I think it was 3 years ago. He come in for that, and he was hoping. In fact, I just heard from him. In fact, I called him yesterday about making the Old Timers Night in Landcraft. It's the last Thursday of the month. Unfortunately, he can't make it. And work, he travels all around the world, so his job keeps him pretty active.
Yeah.
I think it's only fitting that you're not going to do it, so I'm definitely going to say it, that the drum corps world has been definitely influenced by your format of drumming, not only your style, but the way you write. And I have to be honest with you, I kind of patterned now that I'm getting into writing, I've learned a great deal from him. And it's unfortunate I didn't take advantage. But years ago when we were in the Suns, my working hours were pretty rough.
Yeah.
I worked long days, 12, 13, 14 hours, and it was tough enough to do practice. But it's been a great and enjoyable life. And it's an honor. I mean that sincerely. It's an honor to have been in the Corps. The only regret I have about it is that I didn't listen to you when you first started the Sons of Liberty and go with you when they first started. But you remember it was such a long haul.
Yeah, I know it was.
Took you 2 years to convince me
I was
before you did.
fighting against you, but I figured as long as we're going to have a bass drum, we might as well have the best we can get.
No, that's nice.
The
you
best
say
there
that.
is.
I know if we were close now, boy, I'd be out sitting on your doorstep learning all I can about music. Well,
You
this is going
haven't
to
done
go
too
in.
bad yourself,
Huh?
You haven't done too bad
Well,
yourself.
I'm no less part,
Oh.
that's for sure. The age is before I can do what
Maybe
you
you should
do.
be glad of that.
Huh? No, you've got a tremendous name. And incidentally, that young man that I'm teaching, he was quite enthused about meeting you, because all he knows is the Les Parks on the music paper, and he loves the music that you write. This is a fact. I don't think people stop to consider it. But you go to the jam sessions, and I guarantee that 80% or more of the music is your music and Bill Krug.
That's one of the reasons that Bill and I decided to put this book together, because what was it, 4 years ago, Bill Pace gave me copies of the company book, and I went through there looking, and I was looking at Bill's stuff, which is pretty much right, and I started looking at the stuff that they put in that I wrote, and for the life of me, I don't know who transcribed those things, but
I
boy,
say that. I always say that.
9 out of 10 of them were wrong.
Now, you can look at it and tell it's not your writing.
No, it's not my. There's a few of them in there that is.
Yeah.
That are. Is.
But most of them are.
But most of them somebody else did, and they did them wrong.
Well, believe it or not, I know George Richter turned some in years ago.
Did he?
Yeah, your music. But it was in his handwriting, and there are some discrepancies.
And there's some in there with writing that I can't even read.
Yeah.
That has my name on it.
Well, that's what I was just
And
explaining.
then, like the other night, they play Old Saybrook with my name on it. I never wrote that. I didn't even know it was a tune.
Yeah. You know what disturbs me, though? Maybe I'm a traditionalist. I'm not going to mention the fellow's name. And we got in a debate over that, and I used to say, if you're going to play somebody's music, play it the way he wrote it.
Well,
And
it
if
would
you
be
don't,
nice,
then
you
don't.
know.
Well, I mean, you could take an excerpt and put in another medley or something, but if you're going to play that man's music, I don't care who it is, play it the way he wrote it. For example, now, Eddie Classy's got this Billy Budd, and originally had no bass part written to it. So whenever Duke would play it, I'm playing the bass part that I would put to it, and now I see they just put out in the Watcher's book. Now I asked Eddie Classy last night, and he said he didn't write that. So he's supposed to be sending me the score or the music the way he wants it. Because I said, whether I like it or not, I'm going to play it because that's going into the archives. But that's what I feel out of respect to whoever wrote it. What disturbs me, you go to the jam sessions now, and some of these young kids are messing around with the drink and whatnot, and they distort the music. Army 2-4 is not Army 2-4 no more. You don't even recognize it. One of the last affairs we went to, they were playing corn liquor.
Oh, I've heard that
And
chopped up in a million pieces.
they're adulterating it so much, it's a shame.
Well, what's going to happen is they're going to lose
Right.
the whole basis of what they're doing.
What was written originally, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And
Gonna be
I'm
a
trying to push
disaster.
for that. And that's what they're saying now. They're trying to have the various clinics, not only to teach the music, but to teach the piece the way it was written. And if you found a 5-piece and you want to play a different drum part,
Hey, you want to play something different? Go ahead, you know.
but if you
I know
play-
there's several beats written to, what was that tune at Drums and Guns?
Yeah.
No, not Drums and Guns. What was the other one?
Is your
No, the other one.
Prussian?
Oh, shoot, I can't think of the name.
Crown Point.
Crown Point.
Yeah.
There's several drum beats to that.
Yeah.
We had our own. I think
Yeah.
Kurt's had one.
Yeah.
I suspect the guys in Connecticut played another one.
Yeah. Well, that's
So, you know, but that's their core. That's what
that's
they
a
play.
problem I have with playing with 3 chords. If they play the same piece,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what drum beat I'm supposed
You
to
want to know
play.
the funny thing, though? I did notice in the book, Green Cockade and that Northwest Passage. Now, Landcraft played both of those, and we played both of those. And if you check those drum parts,
Pretty close.
they're pretty doggone close.
Yeah, I think Quigley used to write some of that stuff, the drum beats.
Almost, you know, it's almost the same idea.
Yeah.
There's variations, but they're very, very close.
Well, in closing, I hope that you will be able to make Jaybird this year.
We shall see.
It's very difficult, and I'm aware of
We
that.
shall see.
We had hoped that Massetti would come and Kenny Schneider, but they had problems,
Yeah.
health problems in the family, and unfortunately didn't make it. And I personally want to thank you for all the help that you've given me.
Well,
in drum corps.
You're welcome.
You know, I got in trouble.
Glad to do it.
Somebody said, "How come Nick always does that with his left hand?" And I said, "We just went back on the tape here. Les, do you agree to allow the company of fifers and drummers to make copies of this tape and to..." Back on the tape, the one thing we overlooked, and it was more my fault, is about your career in the M&M and how it all came about. Would you give us something on that?
That started with George Rodriguez, who somehow talked me out of Heiser into Hearst. And the first contest I made with them was either 40 or 41 was the Nationals in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I stayed with them right up until the time I went into service. And after we came out, as I said, we had a falling out, and I went back to Heiser with Henry Kukuna. And at the time, Heiser was fife, drum, and bugle. And when Henry and I came in the Corps, we wound up with 5 snares, I think 2 bass. And every time we wanted to go to a contest, the buglers didn't want to go. So we were getting discouraged. So they asked me if I would take over the drum line in Heiser, which I said yes. And that's when Bill and I started writing together. Up until that time, I'd never done anything with him.
When did... excuse me for interrupting
Yeah.
you. when you were involved with Juilliard School of Music? Was it at this particular
Oh,
time?
I was going there all the time, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I started Juilliard in 46,
Okay.
and I went to Heiser in 40, I don't know, late 46, early 47 or something like that. But it was originally drum and bugle corps, and then Bill and Jimmy O'Connor came in, so we had a fife line. So now we were fife, drum, and bugle, so we figured, great. That's when I started writing with Bill. That's the first thing I did with him was, I remember the 3 tunes, the Twister, Devil's Flute, and Red Coated Fifer. Those are the first 3 I ever wrote. And then he and I just started collaborating after that. Everything he brought around, you know, was all his music. And we got disgusted because buglers didn't want to go to contests. So I laid down an ultimatum, we started talking about it, and I said, look, either we break away and start our own corps, an ancient fife and drum, or I quit and I'm going to the Minutemen. At a big meeting, finally we decided to break away, and boom, the Sons of Liberty came into existence. September 1947.
Yeah.
Which was a good bunch of years.
Now, give us some information about your instruction career with your M&M course.
Well, I started that later. That was in 1950 something. I started teaching over in New Jersey, and the first corps I taught over there was St. Vincent's Cadets. From there, I went to taught many of them over the Hawthorne Caballeros, the Skyliners, Connecticut Hurricanes. There's a whole bunch of them I was involved with.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
Do you recall one time I went to visit, I believe it was Hawthorne, when you were still teaching them, and you were talking to me and said, how'd you like to get in the drum line? And I thought about it, and I said I would try it for 1 year, but there was a few conditions, and you said name it, and you got it.
Yeah.
I said one, I think the corps was doing some kind of a dance routine, and I'm no dancer. So you said, well, there's no problem, we'll make a floater out of you. And I didn't know what a floater was anyway. But I wouldn't have to do the dance step. And then you said, well, what's the other one? I said, the other one was that you go in the snare drum line and play in front of me. And you didn't do it.
That was a no-no.
So that ended my M&M career.
That was a no-no. After I left well, at the time it was Gabarina Mazarakis, supposed later to become the Skyliners. That was the last I wanted to see in M&M corps, except to teach them. That was all right. I didn't mind that, but I certainly didn't want to play with them anymore.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you asked.
I just had at this get together, Bergen County. The one we was, Duke and I were in.
Oh, yeah. Right.
They were having a union. We got there. It wrapped up about 2 hours way before it was supposed to end. Well, there's some fellas that come down from the Newburgh area, and it's part of Port Ewan, M&M Corps, the old 56, and I don't know, some other, 1 or 2 other corps. And they were trying to entice me to come in the corps as one of their bass drummers.
Oh, yeah?
And I said, I'm in 3 corps now, and I can't cope with that. That's it.
No, that's too much.
Yeah, they're going all the time.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed the teaching aspect of it for a while. That was pretty good, getting a chance to do some different things anyway.
You enjoy teaching so long as the ones that you're teaching are willing to learn.
Yeah, well,
Right.
and as long as they won.
Yeah.
Well, at least I got that record anyway. They had the top drum line for 8 years in a row in the Legion.
That's fantastic.
And then I introduced the timbales and drove everybody nuts. They
I
couldn't
know.
figure out what to do with them.
Yeah, that started.
And I started adding all that stuff in there, and they were going crazy.
Yeah. Now they're coming out with the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Organs and.
They've gone too far with it now. It ceases to be a drum corps anymore. I mean, you got 2 valves on a horn. Why not put the other one on and go and play a trumpet?
Yeah, be done with it.
You know, at least a fife stays a fife, and the drum stays a drum.
Of course, you see that stick that Jack had last night.
That's nice. I'd like to see 2 of them clipped together.
Yeah. Okay, is that about it? Is there any more as far as the drum corps?
I can't think of anything.
Can't entice you to move up towards Kingston area? You enjoy the snow, I know that.
If you want to warm the weather up by about 40 degrees, I might consider it. No, I guess there's thousands of little incidents you could talk about, you know,
Yeah.
but to try to remember them all in order or anything like that's impossible.
I'd like to make mention of the fact that Les was living in Lauderhill, Florida, and he just recently moved to Ocala.
Right.
Well, did you say you're about an hour or two from Massetti?
Yeah, he's about
He's living in Palm Coast.
he's about 80 miles from me, so it's not too far really.
You know, get your motorcycle and you can get together.
Yeah, I got to get it fixed before I take it out though. Get the
How-
wheels put on it.
How far are you from Orlando?
Orlando is 100 miles south.
South of you?
South.
I was thinking Ocala was below you.
No, you know what Daytona Beach is?
Yeah.
We're directly west of Daytona
Oh,
Beach.
okay.
And it's all like in the middle of the state actually.
Well,
That's a lot nicer there.
again, we say we hope you can make Jaybird.
Well,
Because as you said before, each year somebody's missing.
yeah, this
It's
is the
unfortunate.
disturbing thing. It's a shame. I hate to see it happen, but I suppose it's going to happen to all of us sooner or later.
Oh, I refuse to accept that.
Well, you're going to have to, I'm afraid, whether you like it or
I'll
not.
see what I can do.
Ah, look at it this way. Look at the drum corps we're going to have up there.
Yeah, you got a point there. We really have something.
You know, and if you're down here, we're missing the best bass drummer we could get. So,
Well, if I can help it, I'm going to stay.
but there'll be nobody here to play with.
Yeah, you fellas will be around here. There'll be some here.
The Heavenly Corps will be much better, believe me.
They don't want me up there. I'll be after those Vestal Virgins.
No, you won't. There are no such things. They were heathens.
I
They won't get there. Don't worry about that.
better terminate this here now. We have built Krug's home in St. Cloud, Florida. And I guess we'll start off, Bill. We already got you down as Bill Krug. We know who that is. Would you give us an idea when you started to play, Bill? In drum corps or whatever musical unit you were involved in?
Well, I started in 1932 at 9 years old, and I started as a fifer in the Ridgewood Post Cadet Corps in Queens, New York. Some of the known members were Jim O'Connor from O'Connor's Quickstep, and Bob Long, and Bob McCune, who was not a drum major but a bugler at the time, and Charlie Rowley. We were all in the same corps.
This is in the 30s. And
32.
did you stay with the fife itself?
Oh yes, yeah. I never switched to any other instrument.
Do you recall who your instructors were by any chance?
Some old veterans started us off, but mainly we taught ourselves. The first tunes we learned were the Bells of St. Mary, Yankee Doodle,
Standbys.
and a Marine Sim. Yeah.
Do you know by any chance when you said somebody started you off, you wouldn't know who their instructors were?
No, it was some old veteran.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Did you notice that they're basically, of course you were a young boy when you were starting, but as you went on in drum corps, did you happen to notice any different style of playing within the drum corps? And if so, what were they as compared to what we've been doing in the past 10 years, say?
Different styles of playing?
Yeah. Did you notice
Oh
any
well,
particular-
it was mostly standard with marches, things like that.
And what was the earliest ancient corps that you yourself remember? And basically, how was it different?
Well,
As
when
compared
I
to-
went to Connecticut, in North Branford, Connecticut, they wore the Civil War uniforms and they played at 110 beats per minute, which my corps played 120 beats a minute.
Did you notice that any of the early ancient corps employing the use of the wide bass drums? Did you see some of
yeah,
these
yes, they
things?
did, yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
did.
very wide, yeah. It was amazing at the time.
Is there anything in particular that you had noticed about their style of playing or their execution? I'm well aware of the fact that you
Well-
were involved in the fifing and
Well, the ancient style snare drums were much longer and deeper than the drums that we were used to. And they had ropes instead of rods, and they played rudimental and non-standard beats, you know, at just when I started.
Now, of course, there's one of the questions that Eddie had forwarded to me is, do you know of any influence coming from the GAR
No,
or any other?
no, not to my knowledge, no, not when I started.
Did you name any of the earliest ancient corps, or even otherwise? Or do you recall their uniforms, their music?
Well, when I first started, I was not ancient at all. I was mostly for marches.
Yeah, you mentioned
So
120.
the Greenwich, Connecticut Fife Drum and Bugle Corps was my favorite. They had red, white, and blue West Point uniforms.
Yeah, I remember that myself.
With fifes, bells, drums, bugles, and trumpets, and they played John Philip Sousa marches at 120. Their arranger was Robert Lejeune, and Yonker City and Willie B. Cumley Fife Drum and Bugle Corps imitated them to the hilt. On the rudimental side, I like to listen to Charles T. Kirk and the Brooklyn Knights of Columbus. I think you were.
Yeah, I sure was. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you happen to recall at that time or that era who was the outstanding fifers, drummers, or buglers, or whatever?
When I was young, my favorite individual was Sal Camarda.
Dear friend.
Yeah, I used to love to listen to his piece. I can't think of the name of it right now. And,
I think he formulated that from somewhat of a classical piece of music.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm trying to get in touch with him.
And of course, he was in the Knights of Columbus too. He
Right,
was in your
right.
yeah. And I was very impressed by New York and Connecticut snare individuals that closed and opened the rudiments in the individuals. And of course, I only know a few bass drummers at that time, namely yourself and Lex Sinclair,
Right.
who was a very good friend of mine.
Very
The
good
drum
friend of
majors
mine, too.
the drum majors I remember were Bob McCune, Gussie Cumley of the Willie B. Cumley Corps, and Hanson of the Kirks.
Right. Do you recall of these various corps ever getting together, either at parades or?
Well, the only ones that I know of, at the time was the Willie B. Cumley Corps went to Greenwich, Connecticut to watch the Greenwich, Connecticut Corps record a few records of their marches.
Do you remember about any of the feelings between the corps? Was there any animosity,
All the
friendship?
drum corps, as I remember, were extremely friendly.
Now, you did mention the out-of-area corps already about the, I think you said Greenwich, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I also believe you said their drumming basically was as rudimental
Not
as you know of the drumming
not
today.
the Greenwich, Connecticut, but the John
Yeah.
D. Kirk
And the KC.
KC, yeah.
You remember which was the first corps that you ever saw with colonial uniforms?
Yeah, some upstate New York corps and some Connecticut corps. They played the rudimental drumming in five tones of the American Revolution.
You remember roughly what the year was when you first saw them?
About 1939.
You don't remember their names, do you?
No, but they didn't read music. They played by rote. In other words, what someone else taught them. They never even read the music.
And not necessarily do I prove this, but what is your definition of an ancient corps?
Well, my own definition of an ancient corps is that it should remain ancient. The ancient corps should play a tempo of 110 beats a minute with fifes, deep snares, and a wide bass drum. The music should be from the French and Indian Wars, the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and any tune that can be included in that category, such as the music written by Roy Watrous, Ed Olsen, myself, and some other people, because we tried to characterize our fife tunes in that vein. Ancient corps should not maneuver, march, dance, or use cymbals or any other instruments except the bugles used by the Third Army Ancients.
Right, I'm glad you finally mentioned the bugles, because so many people today, when you mention ancient corps, they immediately affix fife and drum only.
Yeah.
When the original field musical unit, in fact, O'Brien sent me a photo that he copied out of a book in Library of Congress. Showed a Civil War field musical unit. Bass were in the front and it was fife, drum, and bugle. Well, we got that cleared up. Did your corps ever compete?
Well, the
What class?
Sons of Liberty competed in a senior ancients class in New York City, New York State, Connecticut, and won untold championships.
Remember where and when?
Well,
all
all
over.
the time I
All
was
the
in
northeastern states.
Yeah.
And did you compete in the individuals, and what were the awards, if
Well,
any?
yes, I did. I competed in 5 individuals and won quite a few first places, some seconds, and 1 third. I played the 3 duties like the Dutch, the Hessians, the 3 camps, and then I played my individual piece. I can't remember who I competed against. It was so long ago.
I know that's different.
It's
If you were like me,
50
the
years.
main thing was to get in and win the contest.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
mind who was there.
Yeah, yeah. That was 50 years ago.
And so the next question was going to be, did you know whether they were alive? But that's pretty tough to pin down. Do you remember your first contest, the first one you ever attended?
Well, it was Clinton Hall in Maspeth.
Okay.
In 1938, I was with the Willard B. Conley Fife Drum and Bugle Corps.
I think that hall's been torn down.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Do you recall anything of the system of judging as pertaining to the corps, both on the main stand and the individual stand, fife, drum, bass, bugle, whatever?
Well, as much as I can remember, they were very fair. They were very fair.
I mean, how about the process? Do you recall? You recall, by the way, that there used to be a feud between New York State and Connecticut about
yes.
the duties?
Oh, no, well, see, Connecticut, you didn't play the duties. You
Right,
played
yeah.
3 scales,
Yeah.
or 4 scales.
And we had the
And we had
duties.
the duties, yeah.
What outstanding parades do you recall? And
Well,
where?
the Mardi Gras parade at Coney Island, New York. We paraded there four nights in a row. And a Barnum and Bailey parade in Connecticut where we paraded behind elephants dropping loads. I remember that.
The KC used to be in that,
Yeah.
only we paraded 5 nights.
Yeah.
Saturday morning,
Oh, yeah.
Saturday afternoon we had a competition, Saturday night we had another one, and Sunday morning
Yeah.
was a communion breakfast for the KSC, so the whole week was all drum corps. Do you recall who the firms were that made the instruments and or uniforms at that time?
Instruments and uniforms?
Yeah.
Well,
I think ours was made by Evans, wasn't it, the Sons?
yeah. And of course the Crosby Fife was made by George Cluse and Ridgewood.
Yeah. Kenny had mentioned that earlier too.
Were you going to, let's see, the Fife mouthpieces?
Yeah.
I heard of Fifers years ago, and even today, Fifers with dentures use mouthpieces.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Or
Because
anyone with a handicap on a
someone
lip or
wrote to
something.
me from Illinois and asked me did I know, because a lot of people have dentures and they can't.
Right.
But yeah.
I know, I remember in the different associations, they had a clause, you could not use a mouthpiece unless you had some kind of a handicap, either a bad lip or dentures, like you said. And you remember the average, the tempo that the average corps played? Well, I think you've already established that as being 110 and 120.
Well, yeah, it's 110 and 120.
120.
Yeah, 120 for modern and 110 for ancient share.
Now, do you happen to have any photos or clippings or whatever that the company might borrow to copy, or any such items that you might care to donate to museums that you haven't already done?
Oh, I've given. Well,
I know you
I
have.
haven't given everything, but
Yeah.
I've given most of my stuff, and I'm going to continue to give more and more.
All right, you send it to me.
Plus my column.
No,
no, plus
No,
my
don't
column.
send it to us.
No.
Plus my column and all that, yeah. And even on the books 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah, I know you
I
will.
gave all my music, and I gave all the music I could dig out of every library.
And I also understand, while we're on the subject of books, that you and Les are getting together now and put all the Sons' music in
I
book
sent them.
form.
I
Good.
sent them already. I don't know what he did with
Great.
it.
Well, they're in the process of printing this stuff up. And
Yes, sir.
well, the next one pertains to how many rhythms did the average corps use? I don't know if you had even got into that, the size of the sticks and the drums
Yes.
and the beaters.
28.
Well, not necessarily so much in, I remember that when I was in the KSC, the associations in New York State required a minimum of 10 drum units. You had to play at least 10.
Well, see, he and I was at 5 for right.
That would be,
I remember all that.
and the other question pertaining to drummers. Do you personally see any difference in the drumming styles, or have they changed over the years? And if so, do you think it's been an improvement, or is it strayed too far from the so-called traditional style of drumming?
Well, there were many corps who had their own style of playing, and it was those particular corps whose listeners flocked to hear. That's what I think. In other words, if they did something different
Yeah.
and out of the
Well,
ordinary, you know.
As we know it, all over the years, it was pretty much the same, except now in recent years, and you see whether or not you concur to this, that some of the corps have taking on an M&M flair, marching maneuver
that's
with
not
that type
good.
of drum. No, but I mean, that's what's happening.
Yeah, but it's no good. No, you got to keep it confined, you know. Next they'll be, if you allow that, next they'll be rock and roll.
Were any of the corps that you play with or presently play with members of any drum corps association, and if so, what association and what state?
Well, I was in the Garrity Post American Legion, the Willoughby Comely Corps, the Heisa Post American Legion, and the Sons of Liberty, and we were all members of the New York State Drum Corps Association.
Do you personally feel that the rules of competition were correct and fair to the corps visiting from one state to another? That you recall?
From one state to another?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they were, yeah. As much as they could be.
Do you offhand know the names of any of the better known judges? Their qualifications, experience?
Well, of
whatever?
course, when I first started, there was August Rippinger, Gus Rippinger, and George Rippinger, Charlie Reese, Mike Chioda, and later on McDonough, and many others who were well qualified.
I'm sure you knew Burns Moore and
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know that.
Yes.
They were.
Oh no. Well, I couldn't think of them all. There's
that's
probably
understandable.
so many. You know.
Do you know of any source of information, and now we're referring to early Fife and Drum Corps, that we, the company, might contact? And if so, would you give your address? But I think you're pretty well. You've got a good background as far as historical information.
Yeah.
And you have articles in the Ancient Times,
Yes.
which is informative. So we know that you're delving into records. By the way, I would ask you your age when you first started. Do you recall who got you interested? And maybe what event fired you up to become a member of the drum corps? Was it your dad, your parents, or?
No, they just had drummers and buglers, and I was in the cadet corps, and they wanted to put a fife line in, so O'Connor and I, another fellow, went into the fife line.
But when you were in the cadet corps, then you didn't play no particular instrument?
No.
Oh, okay, I see.
Not at all.
Now, and the next question is, it's really all academic, because I know you've donated things about having all instruments. Do you have any suggestions or ideas or comments about way the company operates, or the museum, or maybe ideas about how to improve what they're doing?
Well, I think that the museum should have an ancient hall of fame, as I have suggested, to let the younger corps members see the true history of the greats of ancient Fife drum majors, instructors, composers, and its development, and by exceptional men and women throughout the years.
That's good. I kind of agree with
But
you.
there are people who are
I know.
opposed to it, you know. But I don't see how they can, because, as I suggested, someone has to appoint the guy, and then it has to go to different people. It has to go through 5 different stages, and they can be knocked out in 5 different stages. There can be no friends.
So what you're basically saying is that somebody just don't put his best friend in and say he should be in without the rest of the drum corps world recognizing
he
him.
could at first, and then it has to go through 4 more stages, and it would be knocked out then.
Yeah, he would be recognized by the other people in the drum corps world.
Yeah,
So it would be
or
legitimate.
knocked out either
Yeah.
way, so it
Right.
has to be legitimate.
No,
Sure.
that's good,
Absolutely.
because 50 years from now, they're going to wonder who Bill Krug was. And like I told Jack Tenzer on the phone, by the way, I got to interview him on the way home in Washington, that 50, 75 years from now, when someone wants to see who Bill Krug was, I'll be there when we're running the tape off and explain this all to them. Okay, Bill?
Yeah.
Bill, thank you very much for your
Okay.
time, and I appreciate it, and I know everyone else in the company that sees this tape will appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
It goes without question. And in fact, I was just discussing this the other day, not only at this past Jaybird Day, but I've seen you standing around the group at Jaybird Day, and everybody is playing Les Park's drum pieces, and Bill Krug's fife numbers, and you're standing right alongside them. They don't know that you're the fellow that wrote it.
That's nothing. I was up there one night, and they were playing from about 8 o'clock till 12 o'clock at night. Hundreds of people. I was standing right in the middle. They're playing all my pieces, and no one knew that I wrote it.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the reasons I want to see this.
But I didn't say nothing.
No.
I just.
And should we tell them that I was also your fife instructor and son's little bit fife instructor? I got Kenny laughing about because I sign all letters that way, right?
Yeah.
That's Hitler's philosophy. If you say the same thing
Enough
often
times,
enough,
they're going to believe you. Yeah?
not only would I believe it, I'm beginning to believe it myself. We're at the Company Hall in Iverton, Connecticut, and we're about to interview Eddie Olsen. Ed, would you start and give us an idea of where you were born?
Brooklyn, New York, 1925, February 3rd. A long time ago.
Yeah, I guess so. Give us an idea of what age it was that when you became affiliated with Drum
Well, I
Corps.
became affiliated with Drum Corps at the age of 11. Kid next door joined local corps, the Lady Perpetua Health Fife, Drum, and Bugle Corps. It was a parochial school that we all went to. And he came next door and told my mother about it, and she thought it'd be a good idea to get me to join the corps and get me out of the house. I haven't been home since. But I remember that very vividly. And the first parade I did was in fall of that year, and it was the lighting of a Christmas tree at Lee Bergson Square down in the 60s.
What instrument did you start
I played the fife.
with? And
I realized early on that anybody who carried a drum around had something wrong with them.
he had to get that in. Do you recall the name of your first instructor?
Oh, sure. Gus Schuck. He was a nice old German guy. He was American German. The story is that he had played with Susan. I don't know how true this is, but this was a happily accepted story that he had played trumpet with the Sousa band. He was an old bandsman. There was no doubt about that. And he taught fife, drum, and bugle. He got $2 a week for teaching it. Very, very munificent sum. That's the way the Catholic churches were. They didn't care where they spent their money.
Do you know who his instructor was?
No, I just know that we got the impression that he had played in bands, and I think he had also been associated with the it might have been the BMT, Department of Transportation Band in the city, or something like that one time. I think Tommy Costa, who's still down in Long Island, he may have a little more background on him, and someday I'm going to have to ask him.
Do you, with your experience now, do you see any major differences in the playing of the instrument?
Well,
Your opinion.
it's hard to say because even then there were differences from corps to corps, and it wasn't until I wound up going to contests that I saw any structured sounds in drum corps. But there's never different emphasis, and certainly there were a lot more drum corps in certain areas at that time. There were a lot fewer ancient corps, but there were a lot more corps in general because every neighborhood had several corps. Every church had a corps. Most legion posts had corps. There were a lot more around, especially in the cities, and there are not many of them today.
Can you recall the first, quote, ancient corps that you ever...
I remember it well. It was 1939 at New Rochelle, New York State Field Day. I was lined up trying to buy some Pepsi-Cola, and a couple of guys in front of me had three-cornered hats and swallowtail coats, and I thought that was the greatest thing I ever saw. And a friend of mine says, yeah, that's the way they dress in Connecticut. It turned out they were from Union Endicott, New York, but I didn't know that at the time. But I was very impressed by the lore of the three-cornered hat. I think is very impressive to most everybody in drum corps, in and out of drum corps.
Can you offhand recall any outstanding parades, or I know there'll be numerous, or particular events that are quite close to you, that you have...
Well, the early parades that I remember were the St. Patrick's parades, and St. Patrick's Day parades in New York were terrible, grim affairs they were. We'd had to go over about 2 or 3 hours beforehand, stand on a freezing side street, and then go out and march in the rain or snow. And I don't think the corps most corps probably never even got paid for it. They were terrible. We wore aluminum helmets in the old PH cadets, and I remember marching up Fifth Avenue with icicles hanging on it. But we were doing our duty, I suppose. It's hard to say. I remember a lot of things made impressions on me. The early contests. I remember the first Kirk contest I went to. Because prior to going to the Kirk contest, I had been to a lot of things in National Guard armories. You probably went to some of them. They were smaller contests. They weren't run by association. They were run more or less by the regiments themselves, I suppose. And when I went to the first Kirk contest I went to, was then an Arcadia ballroom, and that probably was in the late 30s. What impressed me most at that time was standing up by the stage and hearing a conversation between two members of Kirk, where one was saying to the other, "Oh, by the way, this is my wife." I never realized people old enough to have wives played in drum corps at that time.
From your experience and observation, did you ever take notice of that corps years ago used the extremely wide bass drums?
No. You mean the bass drums that we relate to the older ancient corps today?
Yeah.
I didn't really see many of them until probably after World War II. And that was mostly probably because I didn't really go looking for them. But they were, at that time, played mostly by the corps, the ancient corps that didn't compete. And if a corps didn't compete, I probably wouldn't have seen them, because that was the main source of activity that I was involved in. But after the war, I remember going to a few functions, such as the anniversary of the founding of the First Company Governor's Foot Guard up in West Hartford, and I think that was 46 or 47, and seeing corps such as Chester, and a few years later, a year or so later after that, Modus or the Noah Webster Corps, they used these big drums. I was very impressed by them, and I never could understand why these bass drummers didn't want to carry them, because I figured if they were dumb enough to carry a bass drum the first time, first place, what's a couple of more inches? They have a great sound, as far as I'm concerned. Although Nicky likes the whack, and I like the boom. I remember an incident with that, though. Once I mentioned Noah Webster. That was a corps in West Hartford run by Kozyak Chilkovsky, who was a famous sculptor. He subsequently went out to South Dakota and started carving the monument to Chief Crazy Horse. And he had a bunch of us come up, Charlie Riley and Albina. I brought these people up because I had gotten to know them. And John Cuneo was with us. And Cuneo had never seen a bass drum like this, and he loved it. And Cuneo was a big guy, and he picked up this bass drum and said, "I can't wait to hit this sucker." And he went running through the door, but what he didn't realize is he ran into the door of a potato cellar, and they couldn't get him back out. We had to back him out. The door was just wide enough for the bass drum, and the cellar was very small.
In essence, you answered part of my next question, is about various organizations that had an influence on drum corps. Are there any others that you can think of?
Well, the associations at that time had a very major influence. There was the New York Association, which started in 1908, and there was the Connecticut Association, supposedly started in 1885. Because most of the affairs that drum corps that I was associated with went to were contests. And the contests were structured and run by the association. So I think that was a major thing. Of course, a lot of the churches had drum corps, some of them good, some of them not so good. A lot of the veterans posts had drum corps. Again, some were good, some not so good. We can all remember back certain corps that stick in our memory as having been particularly outstanding, right?
Can you offhand, now you were talking about people from the past, outstanding drummers, fifers, buglers, and drum corps, the names of some of the outstanding corps?
Well, I think outstanding in New York, you'd have to say that Charles T. Kirk was an outstanding all-around corps. I always say that they set the pace for administration, for social life, for music. They were a very fine organization, even though some of the people in the corps took themselves a little too seriously. But the corps itself was always good, to my recollection. Prior to the 1930s, I had always been told that they were more or less like a town band. It took Pop Ripperton to really bring them about and form them into the kind of corps that they became. They were a championship corps in every way, shape and form. The ancient corps that I first saw were very impressive to me. I remember Landcraft and Stony Creek. The Ellsworth was another very fine corps. These are corps I remember from back in the late 30s and early 40s. And there weren't that many ancients around in those days.
Yeah.
If you saw 4 or 5, it was a hell of a lot.
Especially in New York State.
In New York, you very rarely saw them at all. The Minutemen. Minutemen was a very important corps because they were the first senior ancient corps in New York. They started in 1938. And we generally give the Union Endicott the credit for having been the first ancient corps per se in the state, and they started in 1935. So their influence was very strong, especially the Minutemen, because they were in the metropolitan area. And again, the lure of the three-cornered hat was very strong. A lot of people saw them, enjoyed what they played, and eventually came into ancient chords themselves.
Ironically, I never realized myself until I became involved with Camden how far back they go. They go back about 100
I know,
years.
they went back to the early training days of the
Yeah,
National Guard,
yeah.
the militia.
Yeah.
But, as with a lot of these corps, the direct line of descent might be a little spongy. I don't know. I know they have an early organizational date.
Now, to digress a little bit, I've always been under the impression, I'm pretty sure, that you were the one that helped formulate Geronimo field music.
Oh, sure. I was Geronimo.
Would you please explain a little bit about that? And what it consisted of?
Well, back about 1940, I played with the 4th Degree Knights of Columbus. It was a fife drum and bugle corps. And the 4th Degree Knights of Columbus was part of a series of schisms in our neighborhood. It all started with the elated perpetual help cadets that I mentioned before. And somewhere in the 1930s, a group left. And whenever one group leaves a corps, there's always ill feeling. And they formed the Bay Ridge Field Music. This subsequently became the Advertising Men's Post-American Legion under the baton of Frank Mangan. A group left his corps and formed the 4th Degree Knights of Columbus, again with some ill feeling. Later on, a group left them and formed the St. Anselm's Drum and Bugle Corps down on 83rd Street. And
wasn't there some of them from the old Heiser post that came in?
so there was one fellow from Heiser that played with the KFC.
I thought somebody from the Heiser came in. Didn't Parks play with them at one time?
No, he was never with the KFC.
No, with the...
Parks played with
Heiser.
Heiser, but I was just talking about the success of this succession of schisms that took place in Bay Ridge.
Yeah, okay.
And it all came down to these corps were functioning at the same time. As a matter of fact, in 1941, each of those corps was a champion in New York State in their own right. But there was a lot of ill feeling between the KFC and the St. Anselm's Corps. But this ill feeling predated my time in the corps, so I didn't worry about it. And I had a lot of friends in the St. Anselm's Corps. I was very friendly with the buglers over there. So we always hung out together, much to the chagrin of some of the people in the KFC. So we said, to hell with it, we'll form our own group. So we called ourselves the Geronimo Field Music. And the name Geronimo came from the fact that there was a popular movie that was on at the time. And it was just a fun thing, But later on, it developed into a fife and drum corps.
Yeah.
And it was a pickup fife and drum corps. We'd have people from all over play, sometimes in uniform, sometimes not.
Top quality, too.
Well, it very often was top quality, except when you played with us.
Thanks a lot, Ed.
But they finally had to put rules out of the company's associations to ban us.
Well, you've named some of the corps. Of course, when we were in the KFC, like Kirk's and other corps were our
there were a lot of corps, and
competition.
the impressive corps in our area weren't ancient because there were not that many ancients. But we'd see corps like Greenwich coming down the line, fantastic combination corps that sounded more like a brass band than a brass band did, and a lot of good corps in the area. A lot of corps in Brooklyn, a lot of corps in Yonkers.
Did you ever compete in individuals?
Only when I really got talked into it. I never really.
I know you was more. You never were crazy about competition because there used to be somewhat animosity would develop after a contest, and to some degree, I have to give you a great deal of credit for the muster feeling of friendship, true friendship, and not that one corps might be better than the other, but to get out there and enjoy one another, which was a very good thing for drum corps.
Well, it was something that was overdosed because it's pointless to be in something because you enjoy it and not enjoy the company of somebody in the next corps.
Do you recall the names of any of the outstanding judges in the past?
Oh, well,
Fife, drum and bugle in New York State?
probably the outstanding drum judge of the earlier period would be Jay Burnsmore. He judged I'm mentioning mainly New York State now. He judged most all the time. And several years later on down the line, Sturt started to judge in New York. But in between, I think 1946, they had Bob Von Deck judging. And Bob was a very fine drummer and a fine judge. But they were, I think, the important drum judges. But the one I remember most vividly was a guy named McNamara. No, McDermott, I'm sorry. McDermott from Bridgeport. You know the story on that.
No,
McDermott had a habit of giving corps 100%. Matter of fact, a lot of corps knew him as 100% McDermott. And that worked out pretty well in Connecticut, I guess, because the corps enjoyed getting 100%. But at the time, the corps in New York were very, very interested in improving and in developing the genre. And he gave 6 corps 100%. And instead of being happy, they were all kind of chagrined. They said, "What the hell is this? This is ridiculous." Word got back to him that they weren't happy about it. So the next time he judged, he cut the marks way down. And it was going to be brought up at a meeting. And the meeting was on December 7th, 1941, day of Pearl Harbor. And I remember the meeting well. And somebody said, "Well, we've got to bring this thing up with McDermott." I said, "Oh, we can't get involved in that. We have a more important thing. We have war with Japan." And then we're going to let it pass over. And Jeremiah T. Mahoney, you remember Jerry? He was an IRA man from the previous troubles. And he was the director of the St. Anselm's Drum Corps. And he had been prodded by his drum sergeant, Jimmy Woods, I'm sure. And he got up and he said, "That man gave my corps credit for 1/3 of a rudiment. And I want to know if it was the first third, the second third, or the third." And he never judged in New York again. So I remember him for that. Fife judges, the 2 Fife judges that were most active in New York were Jack Clapp, who was the drum major of the Veteran Corps of Artillery, a very fine gentleman, and Ed Reese, who came from up in Mamaroneck, another very fine gentleman. Both 2 very tall, good-looking guys. And, you know, you mentioned judges. You look at the pictures of the contests in those days, you could tell who the judges were. They were either in uniform or they were extremely well-dressed. Now I see people running around in shorts and sneakers and clipboards, and you don't know the contest from the judge.
Whatever became of Walter Mullen? He used to be a judge in drumline.
He judged a little bit later on. He developed. Well, he was a judge that came out of drum corps, and people like he and Fitzgerald. They came along later on. But I'm talking about the ones that were basically judges.
Would you be kind enough to mention the names of the various corps that you actually participated with?
Well, I started with OLPH, and then I went to the 4th Degree Knights of Columbus. And I went there mainly because the church decided that my old instructor wasn't good enough to teach him. He had been there 25 years working for $2 a week. And then they finally decided to let him go and turn the corps into a bugle and drum corps, which was I couldn't stand for. So I joined the KFC, and I was part of the initial Fife line. You were already a member of the KFC.
Yeah.
And you were probably there when I had to take my test to get
your
membership.
Yeah.
But they had 2 Fifers that joined on Monday, and I joined on Wednesday. Curly Kamada and a fellow by the name of Lenny Haney, who I never heard of or saw again. And I came in on Wednesday, and that was the original KFC Fife line. Then from there, I left them, and I went to Kirk. I played with Kirk for about, I guess, 3 years, but most of that time I was in the Army, so I didn't play with him that actively. And when I got out, we tried to get a corps going in the old neighborhood again, on Bay Ridge. And I went around with guys like Breen, Haggerty, Kowalski, and place to place, trying to get something to sponsor us. And it didn't seem to come off. And then some of the guys that had been in the KFC were starting up in the Catholic War Veterans. They had the backing of the local Post 5. And they asked me if I could pull our crowd in there and kind of fill out the line with them. So we did. We decided to go in with them, and that was the formation of the Post 5 Catholic War Veterans. And if you notice, I had the sign up there. And when Willie the Weasel was here, he says, "I remember them." He says, "Half them weren't Catholics, and the other half weren't war veterans." And I played with them until they just were going out of the picture. And then I joined the Sons of Liberty.
One thing that we omitted here is that you also are the custodian of the archives. You take care of all the documents and everything in this company museum, which is quite a feat. I know you're pretty busy with that. Now, is there anything else you would like to say here?
Well, 2 of the corps that I played with that I enjoyed the most were not competitive corps. They were old-time groups. One was the Veteran Corps of Artillery, and I enjoyed both of these corps because of the old men that played with them, and the stories and the spirit that they had. And the other was the Warehouse Point Corps of Connecticut. Both of them are long gone. There's a new Warehouse Point Corps, and there's a Veteran Corps of Artillery field which still functions. But the old-timers that I enjoyed the most have passed on. And I think they helped me realize what a great thing drum corps were. You know, what a great opportunity to get around and meet good people and have a lot of fun together.
Well, before we conclude here, actually we could talk for hours because you're.
No, we can't. My can is empty.
He's got a little brew there. Are you perfectly willing to permit the company to not only show these tapes, or to perhaps use them for resale?
They're foolish enough to look at them.
No.
Do anything they want with them.
Therefore, you willingly render all rights to the company and make no claim?
I have my check with Bill Gallagher.
Well, I want your answer, because it would get...
I do.
Okay, I do. You relinquish all rights?
I relinquish all rights to everything.
Okay. We appreciate this, Ed, very much. And I have to say, my association with you in the past has been nothing but extraordinary.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
Really, thank you.
Okay, Dick.
I may have...
I hope you don't feel I treated this too glibly.
No, this is what... Ed, it's like a photograph. You pose for it. That light's flashing. We know we're taping. We're at the Company Hall in Ivyton, Connecticut, and we're about to interview Charlie Riley. I know he was a fifer instructor and composer, and we're going to get some of his history. Charlie, would you give us some idea where you were born and when you first became affiliated with Drum Corps?
Well, I was born in South Brooklyn, and my first affiliation was with the Ridgewood Post Cadet Corps. My father was active in the VFW post at Ridgewood, and they started a cadet corps, which led to forming a field music, and I was a drummer, a slam bang drummer. We had no instructor, but that was my first association with the drum corps.
What age?
I was 13 years old, and then in Ridgewood, where I lived, there must have been 20 drum corps in a radius of a mile, and drum corps were a big thing, and I'm talking about 33, 34, 35, and got bigger up until the war came along. I left Ridgewood Post. They had no instructor, and I went to Wyckoff Heights, Fife Drum and Bugle Corps. It was, we met in a Wyckoff Heights Presbyterian church, but it was not, the drum corps was a neighborhood type corps. It wasn't affiliated with the church. They allowed us to play there, practice there, for which we paraded once a year when they had their
Red Parade?
Their Brooklyn City School parade. And the teacher that we had was Mr. Passett, Charlie Passett.
Was this your introduction into the fife now?
This was my, well, I joined the corps as a drummer. And then I started fooling around with the bugle. And then Mr. Passett said, let me teach you how to play a fife. Then you'll be able to play all three of them. And that's when I started to play a fife.
What year that was?
Yeah, that was 1934. And the following year I joined the Joseph B. Garrity Post, Fife Drum and Bugle Corps. And I played with them for 5 years. And we were, you know, at that time, I guess you might say, we were a fairly good corps. We beat the Kirks once, you know.
Good corps.
Yeah, and, but we didn't compare to them in any way. And this corps broke away from the Garrity Post and named the corps after Willard Cumley, who had been killed in an automobile accident on New Year's Eve of 30, well, I guess it was the morning, January 1st, 1939, I guess it was. And we broke away from Garrity Post and formed the Willard B. Cumley Memorial.
See, I learned something. I didn't know that's how that name came into being.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I stayed with this corps until I joined the Kirks in 41.
Now, you mentioned your first fife instructor.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know his instructor? And perhaps anything of his history?
No, I don't. All I know that Mr. Passett played fife, and at that time they had letter carriers. This is the Postal Service now. They had a drum corps in Brooklyn that he taught and played with. And he taught a lot of people. And a lot of corps. He taught St. Mary's Store of the Sea, and he taught St. Catherine of Siena and St. Albans. And of course there was the Passett Drum Corps, Fife Drum and Bugle Corps, that met in Ridgewood. This is one of the corps that met in Ridgewood. There's so many corps in Ridgewood, unbelievable. You know, in a small area.
Yeah. St. Matthias, Troop 67, the Catholic War Vets, Boy Scout Troop,
Yeah.
St. Camillus, Ridgewood Post, Bassett, Cumley, all on this one street that rehearsed. I guess they're starting to jam. I was hoping to hold that off so we didn't pick it up. But maybe it's good for the background. Do you, in your opinion, see any outstanding difference between the style of playing when you were a youngster as compared to what they're doing today? Well, when I was a youngster, I was not associated with any ancient corps at all. I saw a couple, I guess, at New York State Field Day in 1940 in Beacon, and 41 in Yonkers. I remember going to that. They come to mind. They're quite vivid. And that was my first introduction to ancient corps. But at that time, I think fife drum and bugle was the thing, especially down in New York. We had one ancient corps, that was the Minutemen. At that time.
Yeah, Eddie was just
Yeah, and I think that's the only one that we had. And of course you had Union Endicott,
Right.
but they were not local, and so you didn't have any contact with them.
You know, it's funny now, we were just discussing that, and I had mentioned that on the interview with Eddie Olsen, that they go back and they figure that the Endicott was in the 30s. But what I didn't realize when I became involved with Camden, you know, working with their drumline, they go back approximately 140 some odd years.
That's amazing.
And we're unaware of it.
Yeah, I don't
Didn't even realize they were in existence.
Incidentally, my father played the drum.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in the Spanish-American War group, Hubble Camp, I think, was the name of the Spanish-American post, you know, veteran post that he belonged to.
I'm glad you brought that up
And,
because this.
But I don't think that he was a polished drummer by any means. It's just that
He did play drums,
He
period.
did, and a lot of people in our back at that time played, even though they might not have been proficient. They played around with it.
Do you recall any particular outstanding parades or events or competitions that were very
Parade,
prominent?
1938, New York American Legion Convention. Gary Post paraded.
Big
It was
parade.
2 o'clock 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, when we marched up Fifth Avenue. Yeah, that was a biggie. And the World's Fair in '39. I played several times there with Gary Post, 39 and 40.
What basically, and I'm not throwing this in as a trick question, is your understanding of what an ancient corps is, its composition? Because I see so many people, the minute you mention you're playing with a corps that has bugles, I said, would you get away from the ancients? And you look through the history books and the old field music unit had the field bugle, bass, snare drum. And that is what we refer to as an ancient corps. But today, now, the so-called, quote, ancient corps is just fife and drum.
Yes.
What's your opinion on that? Do you recognize that as...
Well, I never associated bugles as being ancient. The field musics that had bugle sections, we talked about G horns,
Yeah.
like 14th Regiment and the 27th Division trained, as I remember. They were fife drum and bugle, or even corps that were just bugle and drum as the field music of the band that played. They were never considered ancient because they all marched at 120 beats a minute.
Right.
And I have always associated an ancient corps as playing 110 or slower.
Yeah.
Even though the Mariners play faster.
That's true.
But they dress and the type of music that they play is completely different. They don't play combination marches that we used to play.
Do you recall any organizations, or either that you have been affiliated with, that had a great deal of influence on drum corps?
Oh yeah, sure. Probably the biggest, the Cokes.
And drum corps associations?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're aware of it, but I'm a past president of the New York State Fife and Drum Association of the Southern District Incorporated. That Joe Culhane is now trying to
Reactivate.
reactivate and get going.
we ran some pretty good contests. Indoor, I remember St. Anselm ran a contest, 86 corps they had, indoor contest. And the Kirks ran a beauty
At the Armory, remember that? What was that, the Armory?
Yeah.
You know what
I remember the Kirks breaking on stand playing the Echo. They were playing the afterbeat of Swanee River or something, and the afterbeat, the Echo in the Armory,
Through it?
it threw them all on.
Yeah.
They broke. Do you remember that day?
No, I don't, truthfully, I don't.
I wasn't with the corps then, that's why they broke. But they were, I think that they were one of the finest corps.
Yeah.
We had lots of fine corps. You played with a great group. But I think the Kirks, they hold a very special place in my heart.
As Eddie was saying, they sort of made the first step in that
They were always
general
a little
direction.
ahead.
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
And they did everything so beautifully. You know,
Yeah.
like yesterday, they were selling raffles for this doll that Mrs. Young made.
Yeah, it's right up here in this room.
And they had a box that they put the raffle tickets in, and it said Charles D. Kirk on it.
Yeah.
That's where they used to put the tickets in when you went to their contests. You know, everything they did, they were a class outfit.
Nick, can you think of any former out-of-state corps that you had any high respect for or admiration?
Yeah.
Other than New York State?
Oh, sure. If I think personally now, there are lots of good corps, but if I were to move back to this area, you know, I'm living out of state now. If I were to move back into this area, Landcraft to me is the closest to the corps that I left the Kirks. I think that they have a lot in common. The camaraderie,
A lot of tradition, too.
a lot of tradition, camaraderie, the conservatism that they have. They're not way out. They're a nice bunch of people. It's a nice family group. I think if I moved up here, that's the corps that I would want.
It's a good choice, too. Did you compete in local and state meets?
Yeah.
Junior, senior?
Only senior. Got a couple of medals, I guess, you know.
Well, you're quite a fifer, there's no two ways about that. Do you recall the names of some of your adversaries in competition?
Yeah, got it. Who never beat me, incidentally. I remember the first time I played against him was in 38, I think, in East Hartford, Connecticut. I came in 5th and he came in 11th. Out of state.
What was your first contest? Do you recall what year that was?
I think that's the first time I played.
What year was that?
38.
38?
In the individuals, yeah. And I never won a medal until after the war. And the Kirks I never played until after the war. Jackie Page and Georgia Ryan, Fred Hugel, Pop Rip. These were the people that they allowed to go into the competitions.
Do you recall some of the names of the judges, your 5 judges?
Ed Reese, I remember, and Pop Rip. I remember the first time I played against Eddie Olsen, and we tied, and then we had a playoff, and we tied again. I beat him on the clock.
What year was this?
That was the Long Beach Open in 1946.
Was that where Monsignor Regan used to
That's
play?
right. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I mean,
And a couple of weeks before that, this is a funny one. A couple of weeks before that, I played at the New York State Fielding in Mount Vernon. June the 29th, 1946. I remember the date because I gave a picture of the Minutemen to them yesterday, and it had the date on the back, where it was taken, you know. And I competed. Curly Kamada won first prize, I won second prize. But my wife played out of state. She played with Gary Postal Cumley, and she won first prize. So she's got the gold and I got the silver.
yeah, we should definitely mention that she was a prominent fifer too, and unfortunately no longer in drum corps.
Yeah. And we had 4 kids that played.
Yeah, right.
It was a good family hobby.
Yeah, that's good. There's nothing better than drum corps. Do you remember what the prevailing tempo was? Of course, it was modern.
120.
120, you played 120, yeah.
But the Kirks, at rehearsals of the Kirks, the rehearsal was in two parts. And the first part of the rehearsal was ancient. We played quick steps and reels and hornpipes at 110. And we had all the musical cards, which we have in a file up there. And the bugles were in the back room practicing while we had our ancient rehearsal. That was from 9 to 9:30, and then we called the bugles in, and then we had a modern rehearsal for half an hour. Most people don't remember that the Kirks really were an ancient corps besides being a modern corps. We played as an ancient corps in competition, so far as I know, twice. Once we played in Connecticut and once in New Jersey. And when we played in Connecticut, there were 6 corps that competed in the ancient class. We had North Branford, Stony Creek, Plainville, Sons of Liberty, Kirks, and Landgraf. 6 of us. And the Kirks came in 6th. Out of the 6 corps, we came in last. The interesting part was that we all got the same fife mark. We all got the same drum mark, but the Kirks played faster than anybody else. Oh boy. You recall what was considered to be the so-called, and I again say quote unquote, standard tunes. And do you see any difference now in those so-called standard tunes?
Yeah, well, back in those days, Road to Boston, Yankee Doodle, Berlin Behind Me, Grandfather's Clock, they were the standards. Today, I have standards now. Of course, O'Connor's Quick Step. And as a matter of fact, I play with O'Connor. He played in Garrity Post with me. And so did Bill Krug. Bill Krug lived about 4 blocks away from me.
Is that right?
And we played in Ridgewood Post together. That's where we started. And then we played in Garrity Post and Company together. And so we go back, he and I, we go back a long
I was
time.
very fortunate in taping Bill
Yeah,
when I was in Florida.
yeah,
Of course, then we lost him.
yeah.
Grateful for that. The thing that disturbs me, and I don't know whether you're in agreement with me, I'm a believer of this so-called standard piece. Now, generally they play the fife tune today the way they played it, unless somebody makes an arrangement.
Yeah.
But everybody's adulterating the drum beats.
Yeah.
And for me, if you're going to play Army 2-4, play Army 2-4.
Yeah,
You want to do your own drum beat, then do that later.
Right.
But don't distort it. Now, I noticed here the other night they played Corn Liquor.
Yeah.
Bless his drum beat.
Yeah.
When they played the repeat, you couldn't recognize
Yeah.
the drum part
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, I
And
agree
that
with you.
disturbs me.
I agree with you.
Write your own stuff, but
Yeah.
leave that so it
Yeah.
goes on and on into the future.
You know, the types of tunes that you can play or the arrangements are unlimited.
Correct.
And anything that you want to do, fine. Do your
Do
own
it.
thing.
Right.
But if you're going to play Yankee Doodle, let's play Yankee Doodle.
Absolutely. It just kind of irks me to see that, but
You know
it's
what I
unfortunate.
enjoyed? Did you see the picture Glory?
No, I'm afraid of it.
And it was about the black regiment from Massachusetts in the Civil War.
No.
Most of them were killed. And all through the tune, they were playing da-dee-dum, da-da-da-dee-dum, da-da-da-da. They were playing Irishman's Luck through the whole tune. And that was the tune that the Kirks played. And I said to Al, why Irishman's Luck? And then it dawned on me. All these colored people were from the South working on plantations that were owned by Irish, transplanted Irishmen, plantation owners. And that was the tunes that were played for the jigs and reels on the plantation, for the white people.
Yeah.
And that was the only music that they knew, was the Irish
Yeah.
jigs.
Now, in concluding this, and we appreciate your permitting us to tape this, and I read this only for the protection of the company. Are you willing to permit the company to not only show these tapes of you in the future, but do you grant the company and Fifers drummers the sole right to make copies of this interview and to possibly make monies going to the company's
Oh, sure,
funds or
sure,
anything?
gosh, yes.
So therefore, you willingly grant this right.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I appreciate you.
Good.
Thank you.